So let's have a look now at two case studies of large organisations on this sort of data and technology journey. Glenn Tommy is Head of Mining, Energy and Construction for Telstra, and Bastian Uber is the Chief Digital and Information Officer for John Holland. Please give Glenn and Bastian a round of applause as they make their way to the stage. We'll be taking your questions as well, so hit us up on the app with any thoughts you've got on what Melly's discussed or what our two case studies here drill into. Bastian. We just heard there about the next industrial revolution, the role that data is going to play in mining, construction, engineering, etc., in this new era of AI and digital transformation. Share with us John Holland's thinking around digital transformation, data. How have you used that to enable people to actually be more productive, to make a real difference?
Thanks, Adam. We kicked off our digital transformation in 2021, and some of the thinking that went into that was how do we have a real impact on the employee experience, the customer experience, and the partner and subcontractor experience of working with John Holland. I'm the first to say it's not all about technology, even though I'm the person that's accountable for it. It's people, it's culture, and it's process. And my business counterparts will hear me bang on about that before I talk about technology. So as we shaped our digital transformation strategy, we really broke it up into what I say is 3 pillars and a foundation. Pillar 1 was about refreshing our enterprise systems, so across operations, health and safety, HR and finance, and really leaning in and simplifying and standardising processes before we started looking at new SaaS-based solutions. Ensuring that we're only entering data once and not the same data multiple times across that value chain, very important point. Leveraging more of our digital solutions, so Autodesk is a good sponsor of today's event, and getting the most out of those tools. The next pillar was around what we called emerging technologies. So this is where we start to look at those shiny toys and say, well, what technologies are out there that can really have a difference to our business? We looked at digital twins, the Internet of Things, augmented reality, and of course, generative AI, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail. And really starting to, IoT, for example, harness new data sets and bring that into our ecosystem. So, and then look at predictive maintenance, so the runtime of assets, look at environmental factors and bringing those metrics back into our ecosystem. The third pillar is around digitalisation, so getting rid of all the paperwork that we shuffle around our industry. It's phenomenal. So how do we digitise those processes and then harness the data that sits on paper? And then that foundational piece is, as Melly was talking about, that data lakehouse environment. So we deployed a new lakehouse environment with Databricks last year, and all of our data goes in there now. So we do have that single source of truth that we tap into. So just unpacking the emerging technologies pillar a little further, generative AI really exploded onto the scene last year, and construction's not usually known to be an early adopter of technology, but we lent very heavily and very fast into that technology, and for 2 reasons. One, we could see a risk to our data. So with 100 million users of ChatGPT in the first 2 months, we knew that our data would end up in these technologies if we did not provide a safe environment for our data.
It's a really important piece on Gen AI. If organisations are slow to move, but some people within the organisation is using it. There was a great survey early on in the Gen AI revolution where a group of people who answered the survey and said, I do use ChatGPT myself at work. 68% of them said, but my boss doesn't know that I do. So if you're sitting here right now thinking, I'm pretty sure we don't use that yet, guaranteed, some people in your organisation do. And if they're at home on their son's laptop, tooling around with your annual report, trying to find a nice way to present it, they may well have released all that information out into the wild before it's been presented to market, for example.
Spot on. So it was really that risk mitigation piece, but also the opportunity of productivity, right? You could see that these tools are going to drive productivity, even if it's as simple as I'm able to produce something faster, so documentation, or I'm able to analyse information faster. So we lean in very heavily. We set up our own private instance of ChatGPT. We were Microsoft Copilot Early Adopters Program. And I'm really pleased to say that those tools have really been picked up across the organisation rapidly. We've got over 1,200 queries a day coming through our ChatGPT service, which is mobile enabled. We've recently uplifted the Copilot licenses from 300 to 500. So it is being embraced. It is a slow burn. It's not a one-size-fits-all, but yeah, we are equipping the business with these tools.
Where's Telstra at? I mean, it's a massive, complex organisation, both within its own structure and the thousands of different clients you work with. When you come to looking at productivity and deploying data-driven or AI-driven solutions that can actually change things for the positive, how do you decide what to trial, and how do you measure if things are working or not?
Yeah. So Telstra's data and AI journey has very much been based, from our perspective, on that cultural shift and the strengthening of the culture of our workforce. That is actually one of the driving forces around Telstra's data and AI strategy. So while there's definitely a technology strategy element to it, so the things that Bastian's spoken about and Melly also talked about with the data governance and those technology foundations are part of it and very important. What's been more important for us is to reflect on reimagining our work and business processes and seeing the opportunities where scaled AI can make a difference. And what we found is when we think about this focus, and we've spoken a lot today about culture and the importance of strengthening culture, Telstra has very much a keen focus on that. When we think about how AI can improve the culture and worker experience, we find that if we can find those use cases which improve our employee experience, it will lead then to benefits for our customers. It will lead to a better customer experience when we're removing the frustrations and pain points from what some of our frontline teams are dealing with in their customer interactions and providing services to our customers. So customer experience, we find driven by a better worker experience. And so where we've really targeted our use case development has been around those opportunities to improve the worker experience, remove frustrations from the way that they have to service our customers. There's a couple of examples on those use cases where we've seen AI tools have really delivered a great outcome. One of those is an AI tool that we've developed called Ask Telstra. And Ask Telstra was developed in response to a pain point that our frontline teams were having in being able to access the information they need to service customers and also then the accuracy of that information that they're accessing. So our frontline teams, they have to be across a lot of information, some 2,000 manuals of information for supporting customers. And as you can imagine, that can create a lot of challenges for them when they're trying to deal with interactions in real time. I think we've all had that experience of being on the phone with a customer service agent and then being put on hold because that agent now needs to go and look up information to answer your query, or has to go and talk to their supervisor to source an answer. What Ask Telstra has done is changed that by being able to give our agents the ability to quickly search an extensive internal knowledge base that we have.
And it also works if I ring up and get a different person next time. They don't need to do that. I'm going to put you on hold for 30 seconds while I go and reacquaint myself with your file, and you know you've got time to go and cook dinner and come back because they've got to go. But if they're giving us a concise summary of they've called 3 times, we've got this far, this seems to be the pain point, bang.
Yes, exactly right. So by being able to have a consistent way of searching our information and also knowing that it's accurate, it means that we can actually respond to our customer interactions faster. It removes that rework or that follow-up that's required. It reduces average handling time, right first time, and that then leads to improvement in other metrics like employee engagement. Like our teams feel they're doing a much better job on satisfying our customers with.
They're dealing with less stressed customers, so they're less likely to get shouted at, get people hanging up on them, all that sort of stuff. You had a second case study you want to tell us?
I did, yeah. Second case study, AI tool called One Sentence Summary. So this tool arms our frontline teams with being able to very quickly pull together a summary of a customer's interactions with Telstra, the history of their interactions, pulls that information from case notes, transcripts of calls that we've had with customers, and builds that into a very simple summary that they can then use when they're engaging with that customer. So that avoids frustrations that can occur when we have to ask customers to give information again, which I gave in a previous call. It eliminates all that. It eliminates the need for our agents to then have to try and read through, transcripts from previous calls.
At pace, what, and live situation. Yeah.
Exactly right. So again, much better experience for our customer. Our agents feel that there's less frustration that they're having to deal with in terms of being able to support the customer with their query. And so those two things just lead to a better outcome.
Okay, so across large organisations, there's going to be, when you go on these transformative journeys, there's going to be some of your colleagues and some of your workforce who just go, bring it on, I'm ready, I've been waiting for this. There's going to be others who get it, there's going to be some who struggle. Do those who struggle, do they tend to be, I'm trying my hardest, I just can't do this? Do they tend to be, I'm really scared, I'm going to lose my job if I'm any good, I don't want to do that? Are there main pain points in getting organisational wide progress on the journey?
Look, definitely, I think the fear factor's one component, right? So the more we can talk about, at John Holland, we're very deliberate in our narrative that these tools are there to augment our biggest asset, which is our people, right? So it's not to do away with jobs, it's to make you more efficient, more informed through the data and safer with some of this technology. So we're very vocal in that narrative. I think the education piece is definitely one. I tend to pivot to where those hungry people are for the technology. So for us, for example, our pre-contracts and tenders team, they were very, very keen to adopt this technology. We set up repositories where we could ingest all of our historical bids and tenders information, very similar to Telstra, then draw insights out of that data very, very quickly to help contribute to new tenders and bids. And so that team's been very, very hungry for change, and we've taken them into Microsoft's technology centre and really started to unpack their processes and have someone with a very non-expert construction lens look at it and say, well, why do you do it this way? And, you know, you always hear, well, that's how we've done it for 30 years. But, you know, working with Microsoft, they're able to help challenge constructively and really simplify things.
Fantastic. There's a question here, Glenn, coming through from the audience. Keep sending those questions through on the app. What can construction learn from mining in terms of data driving improved productivity? Tom suggested that there's probably, Bastian suggested there was probably it's a bit of a lagging industry in this space, construction?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, mining and especially oil and gas, they do a very good job around data-driven decision-making, which leads to productivity improvements. I think the one thing that mining organisations and oil and gas operations have is that really clear end-to-end visibility of their value chain. So if you think about in mining, you've got a number of processes along the value chain, and they're able to quite cohesively build an end-to-end view. Even though there might be different assets and different plant and equipment along that value chain, they can build that end-to-end view. So I think with construction, that is a challenge. Like, you know, in the construction ecosystem, that end-to-end value chain, there's a lot of different parties in that value chain. How do we create that end-to-end cohesive view so that we can actually source data from all parts of that value chain?
We've got another question here from Rachel. How can we resolve the tension between the ability to store vast quantities of data in an unstructured format and the way a curious human mind works logically to explore and go through information? You talked about your data lake. Even first of all, what do you mean by it? What is, for those who might not, what is a data lake? What does it do? And what sort of decisions do you have to make about the way you actually store and structure data?
Yeah. So the difference for us now, and Melly, I think, alluded to, we used to talk about structured and unstructured data, and now it sort of doesn't matter. In a lake, you can dump everything, whether it's video format, emails, you know, structured and unstructured. I think for us now, we have the ability to bring it all together and join data sets and derive insights that historically we couldn't do. And then I think if you get even sexier than that, you put the...
Is it possible? Just thinking out loud. Sorry, keep going.
Put the sexy generative AI over the top, and if you've got confidence in your data, you know, that sort of technology can draw insights that our humans aren't able to do.
This is the real interesting point with the Gen AI, isn't it? Because we've all got those favourite examples of the hallucinations, when these things are allowed to just roam over the internet. You might have seen Google augmented their search function to have an AI summary of search, and someone asked it, I'm trying to make a pizza, the toppings keep sliding off, and the Google Gen AI Gemini response was, if you glue the toppings to the pizza, they'll stick on. And then it was good enough to say, make sure you use a non-toxic glue, obviously, for when people...
That's good.
They managed to trace back and find the original complete tongue-in-cheek Reddit thread that came from. And so the algorithm clearly just didn't prioritise properly and put far too much emphasis. But if you build your own, if you make your own bespoke GPT and wall it off from the rest of the world, you build your own Llama platform or something, and feed it with your organisation's own data, you should be reasonably confident quality in means quality out. You're not going to get these, still got to check, but you're not going to get as many weird, gigantic hallucinations as a chat GPT that just combs the entire internet. Am I right in that we're moving in that direction?
You are. You still have to have some due diligence around that, though. Like with us, Telstra, one of the things that we experienced in the early days of prototyping that tool was some incorrect information, because in our knowledge base, there were old knowledge articles that were in there, which when AI went in and retrieved answers, it was actually pulling from out-of-date information.
It's since been superseded, but
Correct.
the AI would not know.
Correct,
Okay.
yes. So that was a big part of the validation process to ensure that those answers were being built off current information.
Great stuff. Keep those questions coming in, please. When it comes to a big, you said your journey started in 2021, but you're looking back in your organisation a long way back since then. How challenging are legacy systems? And also, if a big organisation's been allowed to go bit by bit, you might have different sections in different departments using a slightly different accounting platform because it was cheaper at the time when they bought theirs and when they upgraded. Is it a challenge still sometimes to get whole of organisation synchronicity of platform and things able to look at one piece of data and see it the same way or be satisfied with the same piece of data, etc.?
Is it a challenge? Have I got grey hair?
It's only 24. It's been a stressful
Yeah, it has.
journey,
It has. Look, absolutely. So legacy systems, you know, for a long time, John Holland built its own systems, right? We build bridges and roads and tunnels, so we can build software assets. And a number of years ago, we said we shouldn't be trying to compete against your Workdays and your SAPs and your Oracles. That's not our core competency, so we are pivoting away from that. We still will build bespoke solutions where there's competitive advantage to do so, but we are trying to wean ourselves off those legacy platforms. But because we have built them ourselves, you know, it's not just a core finance system, but it knows what Adam's coffee order is in the morning. So how do you start to then rip it out of your architecture?
You'd see this all the time in some of your clients and in Telstra itself sometimes.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, a big part of the foundations work that we did, the groundwork we did, was about migrating workloads to public cloud environments. And what that's helped us do is also then, as we're building AI tools, we're basing it on reusable assets. So that we found has really increased the time to value or the speed to value because we have reusable assets that our AI tools are built on. So really we can actually repurpose the same platforms for different use cases, and there's an infinite number of use cases that we can then look at applying the technology to, rather than building an AI stack or an AI tool specifically every time for each individual use case, which obviously doesn't give as great a return and speed to value.
Now, some people in this industry, when they hear phrases like laggard and all that thrown around, they're going to say, yeah, look, I can understand why Telstra's a tech company. I can understand why you guys, you'd be all over your AI and that sort of stuff, mate. We dig holes in the ground. You know, we are, you know, there's some data involved, but when some people would argue that construction's not as naturally conducive to digital transformation or as reliant on it as other more tech-heavy industries might be. Is there any validity in that?
I think, like certainly we're a technology company, but we still have a lot of the same challenges, like especially around the workforce and the makeup of our workforce, the different generations in our workforce who are not necessarily, you know, digitally savvy when they entered their job. Field service technicians, line technicians, many aspects of their job is quite physical still, and maybe some aspects of it haven't changed much over time. So we've still had those same challenges, and that's why our data and AI journey has very much been based on a cultural shift that we want to create, because we have recognised that for us to become a data and AI fueled workforce, we've got to bring everyone along on that journey. So not just the ones that have been using digital tools and very comfortable with digital tools from the beginning of their career, but also those members of our workforce who have been in our organisation for a long time and have been here in times when data and AI was not being used. So I would say that those challenges are still similar to the challenges that we have in terms of upskilling and fueling our workforce to be data and AI literate.
So in the parts of your workforce that are closest to that, you know, forget the punk coalface, but where the nails are going into the wood, where the tar is going down the roads, what part of their day-to-day work lives have been most transformed in the last 2 to 3 years?
It's an interesting one because exactly your question, you know, you're digging holes or you're pouring concrete. But for me, it's about, okay, well, that person now spends less time in the site office filling out sustainability reports and safety reports because a lot of that becomes automated using this technology. So they have more time on the project site or more time with their families rather than doing all the paperwork and you know, a lot of the administration that comes along with their role.
I was at one large construction organisation sometime in the past few years, so I don't identify them, but they were presenting their contract, their gig of the year, their event, their project of the year award, and it went to something that was comfortably in the billions. And they said that creating the pitch alone for that cost them well north of $10 million, and I won't say how much, but we're talking massive amount of money and people's hours and hours of people's time, and probably some of it unpaid overtime. Just getting the pitch together to bid for something worth billions. There must be tremendous potential for some of these new technologies to do that faster, better, at least getting the first drafts of things up and running.
100%, and that's where a lot of our time's focused at the moment in what we call the pre-contracts and tenders teams. So exactly what I said before, how do we draw on historical information? One of the things we're about to launch to the business is bringing in all of our corporate imagery and videos into an AI-driven repository, so they can just type in the word bridge and get all of those images back very quickly. And the people that put those images in don't have to tag them with 6 layers of metadata for us to retrieve them. So it is about making those processes more efficient and faster to push out, outcomes.
Just quickly on the risk side of this, cyber and the cyberspace, are organisations also having to go on a journey? The more they play with their own data, the more they put it in different places, the more potentially you open it to breach. And you've got a layer now also of generative AI and other AI-fuelled devices being used by the baddies. I'm constantly being told cyber's a rapidly exploding space that people really need to be across.
100%. And while we want to be able to advance quickly and innovate quickly using AI, we still need to be prudent. And one of the biggest measures that we need to apply of caution is around that cybersecurity, that cyber resilience, and making sure that we're not risking exposing customer-sensitive information through deploying an AI tool which has some sort of vulnerability around cybersecurity. So that is actually a very, very key handbrake or sort of cautionary element that we need to apply with any new AI tool.
Yeah, we just got a question coming in exactly on that. How important is the linkage between data, AI and secure connectivity networks? What's the security piece at your end? Bastian?
Robust.
Yeah.
Robust. Look, we've invested a hell of a lot in cybersecurity. Earlier this year, we were assured level 1 compliant with the government's Essential 8 framework. It is an ongoing program of work. So cyber's not something you put in your budget one year and you forget about the next. It's ongoing and ongoing. And everything we do has cyber embedded into it up front. So it's not a consideration once the contract's been signed with a third-party vendor. We always look at it up front.
Yeah. And just to add about the connectivity piece, like ultimately underpinning data is the ability to be able to access it and consolidate it. So having the connectivity in place to be able to facilitate that, really important, so that we can source the data from many disparate sources.
Here's a question you might want to have a swing at, or you might want to ask me to move on. For Bastian, are your tender teams primarily using Gen AI to produce bids faster, i.e. just the bid as it pretty much would have come out, but a bit sexier, a bit faster, some graphics in there? Or are they gaining strategic insights they would not otherwise have? Is the bid becoming better through the use of these sort of technologies? Where are you at on that journey? Because they're talking about a future where the AI will just be able to write the bid and the two AIs will talk to each other, sort out the best bid, contracts, and we humans just won't even be in the... in all seriousness, I think down the Gen AI path, the whole idea of the old days where just two teams of lawyers would lock themselves in a room for a fortnight and just try and slit each other's throats. Yeah. You'll get organisations both just coming up with a mutual contract and going, you can't get much better than this without them being seriously screwed around, and you both know that, and this is where we start from. That's a fair way down. But are you using it more to get what you would have got anyway, just quicker, or to actually get a fundamentally different tender processing experience?
It's a really good question. And the way I'll answer it is, yes, it's much faster. We developed our guidelines with regard to the use of AI in John Holland. And really the two most important points are we don't put John Holland data into public instances of the technology. And the next one is a really important point. The human is accountable for the output of the technology, right? We don't abdicate responsibility and say, well, that was spat out by this technology. I don't know what it means or what it says, but I pushed it through. No, we don't do that. And some of the things we're talking to our design house partners around it is how do we use this technology moving forward to come up with new designs that we haven't thought of in the past that have an impact on carbon, for example. You know, a similar design to this bridge, but 5% less concrete or steel. And for me, that's fascinating to see where the technology will take it, but still having the human play a role as an expert.
You're starting to see some fantastic things in designs of parts and pieces and just coming up with objects that the human mind probably would not have thought of, that are 30% more efficient, 20% stronger and the like. We're close to wrapping this up. Some people in the audience are possibly well on their digital transformation and data journey in the sort of position you are as well. Others are probably more in that long tail that some people say this industry has. Pitch to them for a minute each. What's your message to people who are a little bit nervous still about pulling the trigger on this one?
Like I said earlier, for us it was a risk and an opportunity. So how are you mitigating that risk that your data today is not ending up in public instances of the technology and being used anyway? And also you have to try different things to know whether it's going to add value to your organisation or not. If you're sitting there and not doing anything different, you're not moving forward.
It's not just about a technology strategy, it's a whole of business strategy. Think about how data and AI can actually play a role in strengthening the culture of your workforce, and how through that you can resolve a lot of challenges and actually improve the productivity and output, the experience that you give to your customers, all of those things which are really important to your business.
Fantastic. Please give Glenn and Bastian a big round of applause. Thank you very much, guys. Fascinating conversation. Glenn, thanks. Bastian, great stuff.